Good morning. Welcome to AP Computer Science A. Today we are going to be covering section 4.3, the for loop. So make sure that you guys have your notes ready to go. Make sure you guys have your repo ready. Type in your name, your period, and don't forget to click on submit so you can get credit for this assignment. Before we actually get to the for loop, let's go and review our while loop. Let's go and create a while loop that's going to print the numbers 1 all the way to 10. So how can we create such a thing? Remember, the while loops have three components. And what are those three components? The first one is to have your, we need to be able to have your variable, declare, and initialize. Now, we are going to do a loop that's going to print the numbers 1 all the way down to 10. So therefore, what should be the first number? Correct, 1. Next, we're going to have a while. Inside, we know that we need to be able to have our Boolean statement, either true or false, or a statement that's going to be evaluated true or to false. So in this case, we want to print the numbers from 1 to 10. So we're going to go while x is less than 10. And I need to be able to make a decision. Do I want to be able to have it equal or just to be less than? So let's make the decision in a second. So let's go and place our braces. That's going to be the body of our while loop. That's going to be executed every single time it goes through an iteration. So and we're going to print the number, system.out.println. We don't want to be able to increase it to 1 yet, by 1, because that's a 1, we want to print it out. And the third component will be just the increment. Right? We're going to increment by 1. And now let's think about that code before we actually run it. It's going to go 1. Is 1 less than 10? Yes, it's going to print it. And then it's going to go to 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So let's assume that it's 9. Is x less than 10? Is 9 less than 10? Yes. Prints a 9. Increases by 1. Now it's 10. It's go through. The 10 has not printed yet. So therefore it goes through and says, is 10 less than 10? No. So he exits. So therefore it hasn't printed it yet. So we do want to make sure that we get printed number 10. And therefore, is 10 less than or equal to 10? Yes. So it prints it out. Now it's 11. Is 11 less than or equal to 10? No. So he exits. And we are done. So therefore, if we run it, 1 through 10. Perfect. Now, we are going to now create a for loop. A for loop is also going to have three components. For, and inside will be all three components. And the components will be exactly the same as a while loop. So a for loop is another way of writing down or creating a while loop. What do you think the first component should be? Correct. We're going to declare and initialize our variables. So I'll take this part and I'm going to place it inside the parentheses. And I do need the semicolon. So think about 3 different statements inside the parentheses for the for loop. So we're going to declare initialize equal to 1. What will be my second statement, or my second component? Correct. It will be a Boolean statement. So I'm going to take that part, the Boolean statement, place it here. It's going to be its own statement, so therefore we need a semicolon. And what do you think is the third component? Correct. The third component will be to increment it by 1. And in this case, because it's the last one and we have a parenthesis right after, we don't need the semicolon. Now we're going to create the body for the for loop. And inside is going to be your print statement. I'll paste it here. And let me go and get rid of my decomposed while loop. There's nothing there. And let me just go and bring everything up a few steps. Perfect. So now we're going to run it. And it creates exactly the same output as before, from 1 to 10. Now, for loops are used whenever you know how many times you need to go through the iteration. If you know how many times you need to go through the iteration, you need to use a for loop. If you're not too sure, if it all depends on the input from the user, or specific cases that you're not too sure how many times, they use a while loop. For loop is if you know how many times you need to go through it. While loop, if you're not too sure, depending on the user inputs or other variables. Now, question. This prints 1 through 10. How can I print the numbers 10 through 1? What will I need to change? See if you can fix it. So I want to print 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. So what do I need to modify in my for loop? What do you think? Go and pause it, see if you can figure that out. Correct. So let's go through. First, we're going to declare, because we want the numbers to go from 10 all the way down. We're going to say, go and declare initialize x equal to 10. Then we are going to say while x is, so it's going to be 10, and then we want it to be 9, 8. So while x is greater than or equal to 1, and instead of increasing it, we're going to decrease it. So therefore, now it's going to go from 10 all the way down to 1. Now, I do need to make a quick correction. We usually don't use x. We're going to use I for the variable. So most of your for loops will be in I for the variable instead of x. So that will be more of a standard way of typing in your for loop. So yes, it does the same thing. Yes, you can use any type of variable that you want. But most of the ones that you guys will be seeing, it will be I equal to 10, while I is equal to 10, while, not while loop, I is greater or equal to 1, and then we're going to decrease it every single time by 1. Now, I have another puzzle for you. What if I want to be able to print the numbers 2 all the way to 100, but I just want every even number? How can I achieve that? So I want to print 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, all the way up to 100. So now, how can we achieve that? Correct. So now, if we want to go to start, what is we're going to start with? We want to be able to print the numbers 2 through to 100. So be 2 is the first number, while I is less than or equal to 100, because we do want to print the 100. And instead of decreasing it by 1, we can increase it by 1, but now we want to be able to increase it by 2. Remember, the way that we increase it by 2 is plus equal to 2. And therefore, that is going to increase our number by 2, but we usually just place it together. It's a little easier to read. And now, if we run it, we should be able to get the numbers 2 all the way to 100. And then we start with 2, we should have. So therefore, that is a simpler way to be able to write while loops, but only if you know how many numbers or how many iterations we need to go through. We know that we need to stop at 100, so therefore we can use a for loop. Another way that we can actually use for loops is to be able to iterate through strings. So let's go and say string, and we're going to say school equal to Santa Fe. So let's see, we have 8 letters, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 letters. So therefore, what is the index? And we're going to print, what we want to do, we want to be able to print each of the characters in a new line. So because we know the size of the string, we can use a for loop. What is the first letter? What is the index of the first letter? 0. So therefore, we are going to start with 0. What is the index of the last letter? It'll be 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Because it's 8 letters, the index will be 7. Then we're going to increase the index by 1. Now, to be able to print each of the characters, we need to be able to print the substring. So we're going to say school dot substring, and we're going to just print one letter at a time. When you need to do that, what you need to do, you need to say I, comma, I plus 1. Because if it's going to be 0, it's going to go from 0 to 1. And remember that it doesn't print the last one. So therefore, we're just going to, this is going to get only one letter at a time. The first time is going to be from 0 all the way to 0 plus 1 will be, which will be just, if we place the index here, let me place the index here, so it'll be easy for us to be able to see a 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Correct? So therefore, that's going to be, once it goes through the first time, it's going to go from I, which is 0, to I plus 1. 0 plus 1 is 1. So therefore, this is going to print the S. The next time that it goes through, now it's going to increase it by 1. So now it's going to be 1. The next time that it goes through, another iteration, is going to go, I value is 1, from 1 to 2. So therefore, from 1 to 2, but remember that it doesn't print the last letter, the last index, so therefore it only prints A. And then we're going to continue, and so on. So next will be, I will be 2. 2 plus 1 is 3, and therefore that is going to be only printing the N. And if I run it, let's see what happens. It prints the whole thing. Now, most of the time, we actually don't use less than or equal to. We just use I is less than 8. That will give us the same output. What do we think? What is the difference? How come we use this? We don't use that, but we use this instead. So what is the difference between this and that? It prints the same output, but why do we use this instead? Because that is the length of the string. So most of the time, if we're going to get the user input and we're going to print the length or the entire string that they type in, because we don't know the length of it, we're just going to type in length. So let's go and get the user input, and instead of, so let's go and do our, oh, scanner is already there, which is great. So let's go and declare our scanner variable or object, call the constructor. And now, instead of, we're going to say school is equal to scan that next line. And now we are going to print each of the strings, depending on what, each of the letters of the string that the user types in. Oh, error. School the length. Maybe if DS can spell it correctly, that might be helpful. So therefore, it prints each of the letters. If I go and type in chieftains, you should be able to type in each of the letters. Let me just go and press a statement. System.out.println. Type in a word. Now, see if you can modify it. Now, I want to be able to type in Lacerna. But now I want to be able to print the letters in reverse order. What should I do? What do you think I should do? So let's go through the process. You got it? Did you try it? Let's see. So now we're going to start with the last, correct? So the length, but let's think about it. The length, in this case, if it was Santa Fe, let's go and place an example. If they type in Santa Fe, and let's go and place our index underneath, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. What is the length? The length will be 8. So do we want it to start at 8? Because it'll be 8 to 9. So therefore, it's my old dog once again. You want to say hi to everybody? Say hello. I know. So now we want to be able to decrease it by 1. But we don't want to start with the 8th letter. We want to start with -1 because we want to start with the 7th letter. And now when do we want to stop? We want to stop when I is less than 0. But if we start with I less than 0, that means that we're not going to include the S. So let's try it and see what happens. That if we type in Santa Fe, we decrease it by 1, nothing happened. So I -1 when I is less than 0. So what happened? How come nothing got printed? So when this happens, that means that it didn't go through this statement at all. So that means that this statement was never true. So therefore, if this is 8, while I is less than 0, it's never going to be less than 0 because that was 8 minus 1 is 7. So therefore, while I is greater than 0. So that's something that you want to be able to keep in mind. Let's go and type in Santa Fe. And notice that Santa Fe. So the only thing that we missed was the S, which is the 0 index. So therefore, we want to say, well, I is greater or equal to 0 because we also want to be able to print Santa Fe. Or the S. Correct? So that is something that you want to be able to keep in mind. So the last thing that we need to cover is that sometimes you might end up with an out of bounds error. So let's say that we actually forgot to place the -1 in here. So if we don't have the -1, and we're going to type in Santa Fe, or just Santa Fe, it's fine. Notice that it says going to be index out of range, index out of bounds. That means that we start with I equal to the length, which is 8 to 9, because there's no 9 and there is 9 in an X. That means that you are going out of bounds of the length of the string, so you have to be careful. If you're going to go backwards, you have to do -1, and that will give you the desired output. Now, any type of for loop can be written down as a while loop. Every while loop cannot be written down as a for loop, but there are different uses for each one. So you want to keep in mind, if you know the length or how many times you need to go through the loop, you want to use a for loop. If you're not too sure, because it's going to depend on the user input, then you want to use a while loop. So that'll be the lesson for today. Please email me if you have any questions, and I'll see you guys next time.